It's a dead rubber game, right? No need to watch closely or analyse how Liverpool are playing or defending. Wrong. This match gave the Reds the opportunity to not only become the first club to secure qualification to the next round of the Champions League, but also to win the league stage outright. Now, the second part would have been the icing on the cake, if not for Barcelona's late goal against Benfica. Because of that, we'll need at least a point in our final game against PSV to officially finish top of the group. Still, you guys know how we do things here on Panenka. Whether it's a friendly, a cup final, or a so-called dead rubber, we always break down the game with an analytical eye to bring you all the key insights, how the Reds perform both with and without the ball. So if you missed the game for any reason, or just want a deeper dive into how Liverpool secured their spot in the next round, this video is for you. Don't forget to hit those like and subscribe buttons, and let's jump straight into it. By now we've all seen it. Arne Slot's team looks strong no matter what changes he makes to the starting 11. Even with a few rotations, the squad still has that same sharpness and quality. Alisson stayed between the posts, with Virgil van Dijk captaining the team as usual, and Tsimikas holding his spot at left back. The backline, however, saw two changes, as Jarell Quansah and Connor Bradley stepped in to give Konate and Trent a well-deserved rest. The midfield trio remained solid, with just one tweak. Ryan Gravenberch joined Dominic Szoboszlai and Curtis Jones in the middle of the park. Up front, Darwin Núñez earned his spot in the starting lineup after his impressive brace against Brentford, flanked by Luis Diaz on the left and Mo Salah on the right. So, how did it all play out on the pitch? Let's walk you through the details. As expected, the Reds stuck to their usual 4-1 build-up shape, with the fullbacks tucking in narrow and Gravenberch operating as the lone six. Meanwhile, Jones and Szoboszlai pushed higher up the pitch to provide attacking options. On the other side, Lille set up in a 4-4-2 mid-block, aiming to disrupt our central progression through Gravenberch. And to their credit, they didn't just succeed in doing that, they also caused us some problems when we tried to build out from the back. Here you can see how Lille's 4-4-2 block transitioned into a man-to-man press. Their double pivot kept Szoboszlai and Jones marked, while the two wide players immediately pressed our fullbacks as soon as they received the ball. At the same time, their two strikers closed in on our centre-backs. But wait, doesn't that leave Gravenberch free to receive the ball? And didn't we just say Lille managed to block our central progression earlier? Well, hang tight, we're getting to that. You see, Lille's two strikers alternated their roles when pressing our centre-backs. For instance, when Jonathan David stepped up to put pressure on Quansah, his strike partner would drop back to block the passing lane to Gravenberch, and vice versa. Sure, this approach gave us an extra player during the build-up phase for a short while, usually Gravenberch, before one of Lille's strikers left him and applied pressure on the ball carrier, typically one of the centre-backs. But at the same time, it completely cut off our options to progress the ball forward. So, how did the Reds handle such organised and intense pressure while building out from the back? Well, let us break it down. We're not going to focus on the usual diagonals from Van Dijk to Salah, or the long balls aimed at Diaz or Darwin. Instead, we'll highlight how we progressed on the ground. The Reds adopted a patient approach, looking to exploit the gaps that opened up after circulating the ball. The backline players, along with Alisson, did an excellent job of taking their time, calmly shifting possession from one side to the other. In fact, during the first half alone, Liverpool completed 298 passes, with at least 140 of them exchanged between the backline and Alisson. Now, managing to do this against Lille's intense pressing is impressive on its own. It's a clear testament to the calmness and patience that Arne Slot has instilled in the team's playstyle. Now, some might argue that it was just sterile possession, passing the ball around for the sake of it, right? Well, that couldn't be further from the truth. And how's that, you ask? As we mentioned earlier, Lille came out with an intense pressing approach, and while it worked almost perfectly in the first 15 minutes, it's simply impossible to sustain that level of pressing intensity for an entire game. By circulating the ball from one side to the other, Liverpool's players were able to drain Lille's energy, forcing mistakes like poor spacing and players failing to track their targets. What also helped open up more passing angles was how both Szoboszlai and Jones consistently drifted out into wide areas to receive the ball. This movement dragged their markers out of position and created space for Salah and Diaz to receive the ball, or even for the fullbacks and Gravenberch to push forward and attack. This allowed them to get the ball facing the play, rather than with their backs to goal, which made progression much smoother. But hold on, that's not the only way we progressed the ball and created chances. After all, our first goal came from a transitional moment, with Mo Salah unleashed into space to finish the move. Now, we're not going to break that goal down because it's something we've seen countless times this season. In fact, we already explained the magic behind it in our Mo Salah dedicated video, so be sure to check that out. Instead, we're going to dive into how Liverpool, under Arne Slot, have mastered the art of creating transition situations, even when they're in possession of the ball. Let us break it down for you. You can see here how Lille reorganized into a compact 4-4-2 block, with each player aggressively pressing the ball carrier. It's a tough setup to break through, so Van Dijk smartly recycled possession back to Alisson. The Brazilian, as calm as ever, took more than one touch, deliberately inviting pressure from Jonathan David. This extra touch and time didn't just pull Lille's front line forward, it also allowed Liverpool's players to drop deeper, dragging their markers with them, and opening up space for Diaz to receive the ball. And this is where unicorns like Van Dijk truly shine. You can see how Ribeiro was caught completely off guard by the Dutchman's sublime left-footed, line-breaking pass. It sliced right through Lille's press and landed perfectly for Luis Diaz. With a cleaner first touch from Darwin, this could have been a brilliant goal. Before we move on to how we performed without the ball, let's quickly discuss two key changes Arne Slot made during the game. The first is, of course, Harvey Elliott, who got us the winner with that brilliant left-footed strike of his. Sure, it took a deflection, but it wouldn't have found the net if Harvey didn't have the confidence to take that shot from such a tricky situation. He's showing that he can play a vital role in our campaign this year, especially with his last two impactful cameos. His ability to unlock deep blocks and make things happen against aggressive defenses is exactly what we need in tight games. Let's hope we see more of our little demon in the coming weeks. The second player we have to highlight is Wataru Endo. Now, Lille equalised not long after going down to 10 men, and just a minute after that goal, Arne Slot brought Endo on. At first, it might have seemed like a strange move, right? We just conceded against a 10-man side. Why make a defensive substitution when we could have piled on the pressure? Well, the answer is simple. With Endo's excellent positioning and impeccable timing on his tackles, we were able to sustain more pressure on Lille's backline. His presence stopped them from threatening us on the counter while allowing us to push higher up the pitch. Once again, Endo showed his value as the ultimate team soldier, ready to step up whenever he's needed and give his all in any role he's thrown into. To wrap up our analysis, we'd like to send a little message to Arne Slot about our out-of-possession approach. Now, let's be clear, we're not claiming to know better than the boss, but how good was our pressing game yesterday? Even before Lille's red card, we pressed high up the pitch and often employed a man-to-man approach. Just look at this instance where Van Dijk followed his man higher up the pitch, with Tsimikas covering for him and winning the ball back. Now we get it, this kind of approach is extremely risky and nearly impossible to sustain over 90 minutes. It can lead to exhaustion and leave massive spaces exposed, especially against quality opposition. But what we're suggesting is that we see it used a bit more often against lesser sides. Take Brentford for example. Early on, we struggled because we gave them too much room during their build-up. But the moment we pressed higher up the pitch and adopted a man-to-man style, we pinned them back and stopped them from playing through our lines. It's just a thought. So if anyone out there has a direct line to Big Arne, maybe let him know. Overall, it was a comfortable game despite the close scoreline. But more importantly, the performance highlighted just how composed the Reds have become under high-pressure situations. It also showed their patience in waiting for the perfect moments to strike, both physically and mentally draining the opposition before delivering the final blow. It's like hypnotizing them with constant ball circulation before landing the punch. Brilliant technique, if you ask us. Now, it's over to you guys. Should we rest the first team against PSV, or should we go all in to secure the top spot? And what are your predictions for our upcoming game against Ipswich Town? Let us know all your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed our analysis, don't forget to hit those like and subscribe buttons for more content.